Right now, while you are watching this video, somewhere near the most powerful person on the planet, there is an officer standing. A plain leather briefcase is handcuffed to his wrist. Inside it, there is no money and no paperwork. Inside it is something that can end the history of humanity in 15 minutes, and he does not part with that briefcase by day or by night. This is only one object out of 10. There is a stone that starts glowing red in the dark as if it is staring back at you. There is a sacred relic that was once stolen and held captive for 22 years. There is a painting that an entire country refused to insure. Its destruction cannot be translated into money. All of them are united by one thing. The security around them has been pushed to the point of absurdity. Bulletproof glass, armed people, argon instead of air, bunkers built to withstand a nuclear strike. Some are protected this way for the sake of secrecy, some for the sake of faith, and some because this object simply must not end up in the wrong hands. The 10 most protected objects on Earth, from the most expensive to the most irreplaceable. We begin with 10th place, with that very stone that glows red. Welcome to the channel for the wealthiest.
Luxury Life.
Number 10. The Hope Diamond, the stone that glows like blood. Turn off the lights in the hall, shine ultraviolet light on this stone, and then take the lamp away. It will not go dark. The blue diamond will keep burning for several more seconds in the darkness with a thick, viscous red light, like a glowing ember, like someone's unkind eyes staring back at you. People who saw this for the first time admitted that it made them uneasy. This is the Hope Diamond, 45.5 carats of deep blue color, one of the most famous and most cursed stones in history. Today, it slowly rotates under the lights in its own display case at the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C., and millions of people line up to see it every year. Many do not come for the beauty, they come for the legend, and the legend goes like this. The stone was mined in India back in the 17th century, sold to the French king Louis XIV, and became part of the royal treasures under the name the French Blue. Then came the French Revolution and the stone disappeared. It vanished for more than 20 years and resurfaced already in London, recut, reduced, almost unrecognizable. And then begins the part that draws crowds to it. Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette owned it. Both were executed by guillotine. The American socialite Evelyn Walsh McLean wore it around her neck, even put it on her dog's collar, and her life turned into a chain of terrible losses. Her son died in an accident, her daughter died young, and her husband ended his days in a psychiatric hospital. Where did the story about the curse even come from? According to legend, the stone was once the eye of a statue of an Indian goddess, and it was simply pried out and the enraged deity cursed everyone who possessed it. This blue stone was brought from India in the 17th century by the merchant Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, and rumor immediately added color. Supposedly, later in a faraway country, he himself was torn apart by wild dogs. It is impossible to prove or disprove this, but this is exactly how a reputation is built, one that has lasted for more than 300 years. But the craziest detail has nothing to do with the curse and everything to do with ordinary mail. In 1958, jeweler Harry Winston decided to donate the diamond to the museum, and he did not send it in an armored vehicle, not by a special guarded flight. He put it into a brown paper envelope and took it to the post office. The stamps cost $2.44. The insurance for the declared value, $1 million, cost another $142.85. The most expensive parcel in the history of the United States Postal Service traveled across the country like a postcard from grandma. Today, the Hope is valued at $250 million and more, although in reality, nobody plans to sell it, which means this price cannot be verified. It is under bulletproof glass, under cameras, under the protection of the museum's armed police, and still, the main thing about it is not the money and not the alarm system. The main thing is that red light in the dark. Scientists have explained it with chemistry, boron and nitrogen in the crystal. But you know, when a stone with a biography like that looks at you with a red eye, it is hard to believe in chemistry. Number 9. The Coca-Cola recipe. The vault that may be empty. Imagine a bank vault straight out of a heist movie, a heavy steel door, dramatic lighting, Armed guards, cameras around the clock, and access control system like in a real bank. All of this was built in Atlanta for one single sheet of paper. On it, written by hand, is the recipe by which a drink is sold in almost 200 countries around the world, with essentially only North Korea as the exception. And here comes the question the company carefully avoids. Is the real recipe behind that door at all? The drink was invented in 1886 by pharmacist John Pemberton, and in that very first version, it really did contain coca leaf extract, the same plant from which cocaine is obtained. It was removed in the early 20th century, but the brand kept a faint aura of the forbidden forever. Then marketers turned secrecy into gold. A legend was born. Only two people know the recipe at the same time, and those two are forbidden to fly on the same airplane, so that if the plane crashes, the formula does not die in full. The company itself admits this is a beautiful myth. Any competent chemist with good equipment could break the drink down molecule by molecule in a couple of days. Only the aromatic mixture known by the codename 7X is considered secret, a tiny part of the recipe. And until 2011, the treasured sheet was not kept in this theatrical vault at all, but in an ordinary bank vault in downtown Atlanta, where it had been placed back in 1925. It was moved to the museum on purpose, under cameras and guards, like an attraction. But that is the whole trick. Nobody pays billions for something that can be copied. They pay for mystery. The Coca-Cola brand is valued at nearly $100 billion. Almost 2 billion servings are consumed around the world every day, and the lion's share of that value rests not on the taste, but on the feeling that somewhere in Atlanta behind a steel door lies the great secret. Number 8. The Star of India, the Sapphire. A surfer stole through a bathroom window the night of October 30th, 1964, New York. 3 men climb into one of America's main museums. Not through a tunnel, not through the roof, not by breaking down a door. They simply squeeze through an unlocked bathroom window on the 4th floor. They go down into the dark gem hall, and calmly, without rushing, they carry out a stone the size of a golf ball. This is the Star of India, a 563-carat star sapphire, one of the largest in the world, milky gray blue, and when light falls on it, a 6-rayed star glides across its surface as if it follows the beam from any angle. The stone is about 2 billion years old. It was born in the mantle of the earth, mined in Sri Lanka, and donated to the museum in 1900 by financier John Pierpont Morgan himself, Vat Morgan. And now comes the most humiliating part for the museum. The alarm in the gem hall did not work that night. The battery had simply died, and nobody had replaced it. The display cases were not connected to the alarm individually. And the gang, led by a guy nicknamed Murph the Surf, a beach bum and petty crook from Miami, carried out the Star of India, a famous ruby, a rare diamond, and a couple dozen more stones, literally with their bare hands. They were caught quickly because the robbers went around bragging about the loot in Miami Beach bars, which, you have to admit, is not the best plan for criminal masterminds. But the stones themselves took longer to find. The Star of India was eventually discovered in a locker at a Miami bus station, where it had simply been shoved like a suitcase. And for one of the stolen stones, the extremely rare DeLong Star Ruby, a ransom literally had to be paid, $25,000, which a Florida millionaire left in an agreed-upon phone booth. And then came an even stranger twist. Murph the Surf himself, handsome and loved by the public, would end up behind bars a few years later, not for gems, but for murder. After that slap in the face, museums around the world rewrote their security rules. Today, the Star of India sits in its own display case, under an individual alarm, under cameras, behind glass that can no longer be opened with bare hands. But here's the funny thing. The security around the stone has changed beyond recognition since then. And the stone itself, that same 2-billion-year-old sapphire, which survived geological catastrophes, a theft, and a night in a luggage locker, has not changed by a single gram. Number 7. The Black Stone of the Kaaba, the relic held captive for 22 years. In the eastern corner of the Kaaba, the holiest structure in Islam, there is a stone set into the wall, about 12 inches across, dark reddish-black, enclosed in a silver frame. People kiss it, reach toward it, and for it, in the most literal sense, people have gone to their deaths for nearly 14 centuries, and most people on the planet will never see it closer than in a photograph. According to Islamic tradition, the stone was sent down from heaven and was originally white but turned black as it absorbed the sins of people. It is believed that the Prophet Muhammad himself placed it into the corner of the Kaaba with his own hands during the rebuilding of the sanctuary in the early 7th century. Today, the tawaf begins from this very stone, the sevenfold circling of the Kaaba, one of the central rituals of the Hajj. Every year, millions of pilgrims try to touch it or kiss it, and around the eastern corner there forms a density of human bodies unlike anywhere else on earth, and all of this is protected by an entire state. The security of the sacred mosque and the Hajj is one of the largest annual operations in the world. Tens of thousands of soldiers and police officers, thermal cameras, drones, thousands of cameras, and costs running into billions. No other religious site on the planet is covered so densely, but the most astonishing thing is what this stone survived. It was chipped, cracked, broken into pieces, and in the 10th century something almost unbelievable happened. The militant Karmatian sect burst into Mecca, tore out the black stone, and carried it away, and they kept it for more than 20 years, demanding ransom for the shrine. Just imagine, the main relic of the Islamic world was held hostage for 22 years. In the end, the stone was returned, fractured. That is why today it is held together by a silver frame. It is not decoration. In essence, it is a brace holding together the fragments of what humanity refused to lose. Number 6. The nuclear football, 44 pounds of leather that can end the world. This is not a museum exhibit. It is not locked in a safe. It is a leather briefcase weighing about 44 pounds, and it is handcuffed to the wrist of an officer who stands within arm's reach of the President of the United States every minute. In the Oval Office, aboard an airplane, at receptions, at press conferences, and yes, next to the bed while the President sleeps. Officially, it is called the President's Emergency Satchel. Inside are equipment and codes that allow an order for a nuclear strike to be issued from anywhere on the planet. It is carried in rotation by 5 military aides, one from each branch of the armed forces, with the highest security clearance. After multi-stage checks and psychological tests, the aide does not move a step away from the President. The President gets into a helicopter, the officer follows. The President goes to play golf, the officer stands nearby with the briefcase. Its contents are classified, but it is believed to contain the Black Book, pre-computed scenarios for retaliatory strikes of different force and against different targets, instructions for an emergency address to the nation, a list of protected shelters where the country's first person can be evacuated, but there is no button inside that launches the missiles. That is a myth. There is something else. A separate identity confirmation card carried by the President, and through the military chain of command, the order moves downward. Without the briefcase, this mechanism simply cannot be started, and in reality, there are several such briefcases, one with the President, one with the Vice President, and another in reserve, so that authority is not interrupted for even a second. And that very code card, commonly nicknamed the Biscuit, once nearly disappeared at the worst possible moment. People realized it was missing during the chaos after an assassination attempt on the President. A little thing the size of a credit card on which launch authority depends almost rode away in a hospital bag with clothing. This object has followed presidents continuously since the time of John Kennedy. The Cuban Missile Crisis showed exactly why. If missiles fly, the head of state will not have hours to think, but minutes. Think about it. Everything needed to erase civilization fits into a briefcase carried behind the president by a person with a pistol and a handcuff 365 days a year. Number 5. The Mask of Tutankhamun, 24 pounds of gold, more than 3,000 years old. 24 pounds of pure gold, lapis lazuli, carnelian, turquoise, obsidian, colored glass, and the calm, eternally young face of a boy who died at about 18, more than 3,300 years ago. Archaeologist Howard Carter found Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922, but the mask itself was seen later, in 1925, when they reached the last inner coffin and removed the lid. It lay directly on the head of the mummy, and almost immediately, the tomb acquired its own grim legend. Lord Carnarvon, the English aristocrat who financed the excavations, died in Cairo only a few months after the burial chamber was opened from an infection after a mosquito bite. Newspapers instantly screamed about the curse of the pharaoh, and since then this story has wandered from film to film. And here is a detail few people know. In 2014, the mask's golden beard was accidentally broken off during cleaning, and then hastily glued back with epoxy, leaving an ugly mark. An international scandal erupted, and restorers had to carefully remove everything and reattach it properly. The most recognizable face of the ancient world was almost ruined by ordinary superglue. But the main news is fresh. All this time, the mask had been kept in the Old Egyptian Museum in Cairo, and in the fall of 2025, it got a new home. On November 1st, 2025, the Grand Egyptian Museum was ceremonially opened near Giza, a giant billion-dollar complex, the largest archaeological museum in the world built around one civilization, more than 100,000 artifacts. And for the first time in 100 years after the excavations, the entire collection of Tutankhamun, more than 5,000 objects, is displayed complete, together. In the very first days, the museum was stormed by almost 19,000 people a day. The mask now stands in a special climate-controlled hall behind bulletproof glass at eye level. It has not been allowed out of Egypt since the 1970s, and as the authorities have made clear, it will never be allowed out again. How much is it worth? The gold alone is worth a solid sum. But insurers refused in principle to put a number on its cultural value. They simply did not name a figure. Because this is no longer a gold mask. This is the face of an entire civilization. And civilizations, as it turns out, do not get price tags. Number 4. The Declaration of Independence, the document that goes underground every night. Every evening, when the National Archives in Washington closes to visitors, something happens that looks like a scene from science fiction. The display case with a single sheet of old parchment begins to slowly descend, straight through the floor of the hall, down into a concrete bomb shelter bunker beneath the building. And in the morning, it rises back just as silently. This mechanism was designed back during the Cold War, in case of a nuclear strike. The document had to disappear underground in a matter of seconds. What is this sheet for which an elevator into a bunker was built? It is the original Declaration of Independence of 1776, the very parchment by which 13 American colonies declared themselves free from the British Crown. It contains perhaps the most famous sentence in American politics: "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal." Next to it are the originals of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Together, these are the 3 most important sheets of paper in the Western world. The Declaration itself is sealed inside a titanium and aluminum capsule filled not with air, but with the inert gas argon. Argon was chosen for a reason. It does not react, while ordinary oxygen would slowly, over decades, eat away at the ink and parchment. Inside, a constant temperature, humidity, and gas composition are maintained. The building is guarded by the archive's own federal police, whose single task is these documents: motion sensors, vibration sensors, air composition sensors, visitor screening like at an airport. And now the irony. For the first 100 years of its life, this priceless sheet was rolled into a tube, folded, carried in trunks, and stored in basements. Conditions that would make a modern conservator's heart stop. In 1814, it was hastily evacuated from Washington as the British were burning the city. During World War II, the Declaration was evacuated to Fort Knox. Yes, that same gold bunker, where it lay beside bullion until the end of the war. Oddly enough, what harmed the Declaration most was not time, but light and carelessness. For nearly 40 years of the 19th century, it hung in bright sunlight in the Patent Office building, and the signatures of the Founding Fathers faded so badly that some of them are barely distinguishable today. That is why now it is hidden so fiercely from both sunlight and oxygen. Number 3. The Shroud of Turin, the mystery a firefighter saved with a sledgehammer. 1997, Turin. At night, a fire breaks out in the chapel, and the flames head straight toward the relic that believers consider the holiest in Christianity. It lies behind several layers of bulletproof glass, which means it is impossible to save in the usual way. And then a firefighter named Mario Trimator grabs a sledgehammer and strikes the bulletproof glass again and again, breaking through to the relic before the fire reaches it first. He made it. What he saved was a 14-foot linen cloth with a barely visible, ghostly imprint of a human body. A man with marks of wounds, as if from crucifixion, marks resembling the trace of a crown of thorns, and a calm, peaceful face. Millions of Catholics believe this is the burial shroud of Jesus Christ. honest, skeptics are certain it is a medieval forgery, and here is what is interesting. After centuries of debate, neither side has won definitively. The shroud belongs to the Vatican and is kept in the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist in Turin, inside a hermetically sealed, bulletproof and fireproof case filled with argon, protected from light, moisture, and dust. It is shown to the public extremely rarely, usually once in a generation, at intervals of 25 years or more. It has already burned. In the fire of 1532, the silver reliquary melted, and marks of that fire are still visible on the cloth. At that time, the linen was saved by a nun who poured water over the smoldering chest. But the shroud became truly famous by accident. In 1898, amateur photographer Secondo Pia photographed it for the first time, and while developing the plate in the dark, froze. On the negative, the pale stain suddenly turned into a clear, almost living face. It meant that the cloth itself was like a negative, and the image familiar to us appeared only when reversed. For the end of the 19th century, this was a shock, one written about around the world, and science approached it like no other object on Earth. In 1988, 3 independent laboratories performed radiocarbon analysis and dated the linen to roughly 1260 through 1390, that is, the Middle Ages. It seemed the question was closed. But critics objected. The samples had been taken from a later mended edge, not from the main cloth. The stains on the linen were confirmed as real human blood of the rare AB type. And most important, the imprint itself. It is not painted, not burned, not dyed. It lies only on the very top fibers of the linen without penetrating the fabric, and nobody has managed to reproduce it using medieval methods. Moreover, when processed with modern instruments, the image unexpectedly produces a 3-dimensional depth map, as if it is not a picture, but a cast. Whether it is a forgery or an original, humanity protects it as if it is afraid to learn the answer. Number 2. The British Crown Jewels, the treasures a fake priest tried to flatten with a hammer. 1671, the Tower of London. A man dressed as a priest wins the trust of the keeper of the treasury, then pulls out a hammer and swings it down onto the crown of English kings to flatten it and stuff it into a bag. His accomplice, meanwhile, tries to saw the royal scepter in half, while a third man shoves the orb into his pockets. This is Colonel Thomas Blood, and he almost carried away the British Crown Jewels. Almost. Today, these regalia are kept in the Jewel House, the treasury of the Tower of London, a fortress with a 900-year history, which has been a palace, a prison, a place of execution, and even a menagerie. The collection contains more than 100 objects: crowns, scepters, orbs, swords. The whole collection is valued at between 3 and 5 billion pounds. The heart of the collection is the Imperial State Crown, and here, brace yourself for the numbers: 2,868 diamonds, 17 sapphires, 11 emeralds, 269 pearls, and 4 rubies, including the famous Black Prince's ruby, which has been with English monarchs since 1367. And it also contains the Cullinan II, weighing 317 carats. Its older brother, the Cullinan I, at 530 carats, the largest cut colorless diamond in the world, sits in the head of the scepter, right there beside it. And that is not even the whole collection. In the crown of the Queen Mother sits the legendary Koh-i-Noor, a diamond over which several countries still argue. India, Pakistan, and others believe the British took it unlawfully and periodically demand its return. And the current regalia are not even the first ones. During the English Civil War, Oliver Cromwell ordered the old crowns melted down and the stone sold off, declaring them symbols of tyranny. What sparkles in the tower today was made anew for the coronation of Charles II in 1661. St. Edward's crown alone contains more than 4.5 pounds of pure gold, and it is the one placed on the monarch's head at the central moment of the coronation. All of this is guarded by the Tower Garrison and the famous Beef Eaters, ceremonial guards recruited from retired sergeants of the British Army. The Jewel House itself is behind thick steel doors and armored walls. The display cases withstand impact, and the entire room can be sealed off in seconds. Around 2.5 million people come here every year, and quite recently, in 2023, these regalia were in use again at the coronation of Charles III. And what happened to Colonel Blood? He was seized right at the exit. He was brought before King Charles II, and this is where the most inexplicable part of the entire story happened. The king was so impressed by the adventurer's audacity that he did not execute him, but pardoned him and granted him a pension. Historians are still scratching their heads, but the tower learned its lesson firmly. Since then, the British regalia have not been stolen even once, and that is especially curious in light of what happened at number 1. Number 1. The Mona Lisa, the prisoner painting around which even the world's most protected museum falls apart. She is small, unexpectedly small, 30 by 21 inches, roughly the size of a large kitchen cutting board. And when you finally push your way to her through the crowd with raised phones, almost everyone has the same reaction. Is that it? She hangs on a separate wall, behind a wooden barrier, about 10 feet away from you, behind bulletproof glass in which the flashes of thousands of cameras reflect. From here, the most famous painting in the world really does look like a postage stamp, and yet she is guarded more tightly than some heads of state. Leonardo da Vinci painted her between 1503 and 1519 on one thin piece of Italian poplar with paints ground by hand, and her entire history is a history of attacks. In 1911, she was simply taken off the wall and carried out under a coat. The Italian worker Vincenzo Perugia hid in the museum overnight, and in the morning walked out with the painting through the main entrance. She was gone for 2 years. Picasso was questioned as a suspect, and more people came to the empty wall where she had once hung than had previously come to the painting itself. That is the paradox. It was this theft that made the Mona Lisa a global superstar. Before 1911, she was simply one of Da Vinci's good works, known mostly to connoisseurs. By the way, Napoleon himself once admired her. For several years, the portrait hung directly in his bedroom in the Tuileries Palace. Later, acid was thrown at her. A stone was hurled at her. In 2009, someone launched a ceramic mug at her. In 2022, cake was smeared across the glass. And in 2024, soup was thrown onto it. The glass held every time. That is why it was installed, and with every incident, the protection only grew stronger. In France, they refuse in principle to assess her for insurance. The state considers her literally priceless, not in the sense of a pretty word, but as a legal status. The Louvre does not insure her. There is no point, no policy exists that could cover the destruction of a work by Da Vinci. When in 1962 she was nevertheless valued for an exhibition tour, the figure came out to $100 million. Today, that is about $1 billion, and even then that number was considered too low. But here is what turns everything upside down. On October 19, 2025, in broad daylight while the museum was open, 4 robbers drove up to the Louvre in a truck-mounted lift, cut through a window with an angle grinder, and in just 7 minutes carried out 8 items from the French royal jewels, worth 88 million euros. As they fled, they dropped the crown of Empress Eugenie, and it was left lying on the asphalt dented. The rest has still not been found. And the investigation later revealed a detail that chills you. At the Louvre, the most visited museum on the planet, permission for part of the surveillance camera system had expired by that point, and one camera was not even facing the right way. All of this, 820 feet from the Mona Lisa. Perhaps that is why France began a huge redevelopment. Under the new Renaissance of the Louvre plan, costing up to 800 million euros, the Mona Lisa will be moved by 2031 into a separate room with a separate paid entrance, so that this crush and this chaos no longer surround her. But the essence of her first place is not that. The crown regalia are more expensive. The Hope Diamond is more expensive per gram. But the Mona Lisa stands here at the top for one reason. She is irreplaceable. If she is burned, drenched in acid, or smashed, she will simply be gone. No copy, no second version, no original behind it. One specific person painted her with one specific hand half a thousand years ago, and that is all. And this entire fortress of glass, sensors, and armed guards exists for one purpose, so that tomorrow another 10 million people can stand before her, squint through the glass, raise a phone, and ask, "Is that really her?" Yes, it is her. The most protected object on Earth. Write in the comments everything you think about these objects, and subscribe to the channel for the wealthiest. This is where we talk about luxury, wealth, and the lives of the most influential people on the planet. Thank you for watching, and right now, watch our previous episodes that have already appeared on your screen.